Let's go back on the record. BF 1668018, People versus Sabrina Limon. Record reflects she's present in court with her attorney and the people are represented. We have Detective Miller still on the stand under oath, subject to cross by Mr. Terry. And all 12 plus 4 in the box. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Nice to see you all back. Mr. Terry, whenever you're ready, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Detective Miller.
Morning. Good morning, sir.
Detective Miller, I'm assuming that you were not present in November of 2014 when that residence at Lime Street, Jonathan Hearn's residence, was searched originally.
That's correct.
And you're unaware as to whether or not anyone had searched the store, or it looked like a storage shed to me that you said been partial chicken coop and partial storage. Is that right?
Correct.
Now, when you went there, it was after Jonathan Hearn, and that was first time you went was January 3rd of 2017. Is that right?
No, sir. January 7th of 2017.
I'm sorry, what's your first name?
Tanner. Tanner.
Did you author the search warrant for January 3rd search? Is that right?
Correct.
And that was based again on Mr. Hearn's information provided to law enforcement. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Now, you went out for the search on January 7th and again conducted a further search of Mr. Hearn's residence. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Again, this was based on more information that was received from Mr. Hearn.
Yes, sir.
And he specifically told Detective Meyer during his interview where to go to look for items of evidence. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And he also told Detective Meyer what items of evidence were going to be found. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Now, this is a little less than 2.5 years after the initial search of his residence. Is that right?
That's correct.
And of the storage shed, chicken coop, if you will.
Yes, sir.
And you don't know how many people had access to the house or the chicken coop, we'll call it. Would that be accurate?
That's correct.
One of the items that Mr. Hearn had said would be located was a gun barrel. Is that right?
That is correct.
I also mentioned a sound suppressor for a firearm.
Yes, sir.
Those were some of the items that you searched for in the chicken coop. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Now, you said that that chicken coop, and I saw the photos, it's pretty dusty, I think you said. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Were there any photos taken of that storage shed chicken coop that you had seen from 2014 that showed the condition of that particular area?
Not that I'm aware of.
So, if I get this right, we're talking about the desert, right?
Yes, sir.
We're talking about a lot of dirt plots, right?
Yes.
Including the one that the house was on.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And this chicken coop or storage shed, was that behind the back house, or or was it to the east or the west of it?
To the west of the single bedroom residence that was in the rear of the property.
And if I remember correctly, you said the boxes were stacked 1 to 2 feet high. Is that about it?
No, sir.
Oh, I thought that's what you said.
Approximately varying from the top of the ceiling 1 to 2 feet from the top of the ceiling.
Top of the ceiling. So you had to do a little physical labor to do this search. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And the only reason it was done in 2017 was because Mr. Hearn told you where to go to look. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
In other words, if Mr. Hearn hadn't have told you, these items of evidence would have never been found, more than likely, correct?
I'm not sure.
Well, to your knowledge, had anybody gone back from November of 2014 until you went in January of 2017 to conduct a search of Mr. Hearn's residence?
Not to my knowledge.
Now, the receipt, Walmart receipt for ammo, did Mr. Hearn also tell you where to find that receipt?
I'm not sure. I do not believe so.
But he also told you about an air freshener in the house that had some SD cards or something along those lines. Is that right?
Yes, memory flash drives.
Okay. And was that air freshener, was that one of those plug-in, reuse it type of things?
It was a Cincy brand air freshener, the ones you plug into the wall.
Can you tell me how long that particular item had been at that location before you arrived on January 7th of 2017?
I'm not sure.
Can you tell me how long those memory cards were in that air freshener?
I'm not sure.
With regards to the items in the storage shed, can you tell me how long exactly they had been there?
I'm not sure.
And with regards to the Walmart receipt, did it specify what type of ammo was purchased?
I did not.
Just said ammo?
Yes, sir.
And were there, to your knowledge, have there been multiple weapons found in Mr. Hearn's residence or in his possession when he was arrested?
I'm not sure.
Do you recall whether or not you located a letter written by Jonathan Hearn to Sabrina Limon?
Yes, I did.
And that letter was still in Mr. Hearn's possession, is that right?
It was inside of his residence.
With regards to documenting all the items that were seized, that was done by a technical investigator that was with you?
Correct.
I have no further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Mr. Smith?
Your Honor, I have no more questions, except I would request to reopen on a different topic with the detective.
Crenna.
Detective Miller, as to search warrants, did you also author a search warrant for Google search records?
Yes, I did.
Did you author a search warrant for the Google account records of a John Hearn 27 at gmail.com?
Yes, I did.
When did you do that?
I'm not sure of the exact date.
What do you, when you're writing a search warrant for Google, what information do you put in?
Request for the John Hearn 27 at gmail.com, including subscriber information, other information including web history, Google photo, Google voice, things of that nature.
Now, this search warrant, did you author it this year?
Yes, I did.
Was it in tandem with the other search that you're speaking about or following that search?
It was following that search.
What type of information do you receive back from Google?
The information that we receive back includes the subscriber information, web history of Google searches, Google Voice or Google Drive information if that's provided by Google.
Now, do you also receive a affidavit of authenticity from Google as to those records?
Yes.
And what is the purpose of that affidavit?
It's a certificate of authenticity to say that the records provided are a true and accurate from Google provided to law enforcement.
Now, the records that you received, did you book them into property?
I put them on a disc and later gave them to Detective Meyer.
Your Honor, if I may approach, have an item marked.
Yes.
People's 34, marked next to another.
Your Honor, if I may approach the witness.
Please.
Detective Miller, showing you People's 34. Do you recognize this item?
Yes, I do.
What is it?
This is the certificate of authenticity from Google that accompanied the records they sent me.
Now, as to John Hearn 27, did you review the search records?
Yes, I did.
Did you review the search records specifically in relation to the word arsenic?
Yes, I did.
Let me approach another item marked, Your Honor.
Yes.
People's 35, marked next to another.
showing you People's 35. If you could review that packet, please. People's 35, do you recognize the contents?
Yes, I do.
The Google search information that you received back from Google, how is it listed within the CD you received?
It's listed in it gives you a date and time, and then of the search that was performed in Google or any websites that were visited after a search.
Okay. So it provides the date,
Yes, it does.
the year.
Yes.
It also provides what is searched or what the query is inputted into Google.
Yes, it does.
Those items up there, People's 35, that what account is that from?
That is from John Hearn 27 at gmail.com.
Your Honor, I would request that People's 35 be moved into evidence at this time, be allowed to publish.
Terry. In the event, counsel, proceed.
And Your Honor, I would also ask People's 34 be moved into evidence.
Any objection, counsel?
Submitted.
To be admitted.
Detective Miller, the records that you get, is there quite a bit of content? Is there very small print in the document?
Yes.
I'm going to put it up on the screen. If you can't see it, just let me know, and I'll bring you People's 35.
All right.
See that from where you're at?
Yes, I can.
Okay. If you could provide the date and the time, and then the search that's within the Google search for John Hearn 27.
The date is March 8th of 2014. The time is it's 20:01, which would be 8 p.m. at night, 8:01 at night, and it would be a website that was visited regarding banana pudding.
What is the full web address that was searched?
The web address that was visited was justapinch.com. Recipes, dessert pudding, easy banana pudding with Nella wafers.
Moving on to page 2. Again, provide the date and time.
March 8th of 2014, and the time is 20:03. It'd be 8:03 p.m.
And what was searched for?
This is searched for Jello banana pudding.
And then there's also the search, or what was the terminology put into Google. Do you see where that's at on the page 2 here?
Yes.
Okay, what was the query put into Google?
The query was Jello banana pudding directions.
Moving on to page 3, People's 35. If you could provide the date and time.
March 8th, 2014, and time is 20:03, so 8:03 p.m.
And the website that was visited?
It is ask.com, food, fruit, how to make Jello banana pudding.
Page 4, People's 35. Let me zoom out a little bit for you.
The date is March 21st, 2014. Time is 16:27 hours, so that'd be 4:27 in the afternoon.
And what was searched for?
Arsenic.
Page 5, People's 35, if you could provide the date and time, what was searched for?
March 30th, 2014, times 05:17 hours, and the search was for mixing arsenic trioxide.
Page 6, People's 35, if you could provide the date, the time, and what was searched for.
April 15th, 2014, the time is 01:34 hours, and the search was for arsenic trioxide poisoning.
I think I'll have to move this over. I'm going to zoom in. If you could start with the date and time.
April 15th, 2014, time is 16:43 hours, so it'd be 4:43 in the afternoon.
And what was searched or what was visited?
A website, cnn.com, 2007 law, and is regarding an arsenic murder. That website was visited.
Apologize, I lost my count. All right, page 8 of People's 35. Provide the date, the time, and what was searched for.
April 15th, 2014, the time is 17:08 hours, so it'll be 5:08 p.m., and the search was for arsenic homicide.
Provide the date and time, this is page 9, People's 35, and what was visited.
April 15th, 2014, time is 02:41 hours, and the website visited was kernsheriff.com in regards to the coroner's page.
This is page 10, People's 35. You can provide the date and time first.
March 21st, 2014, time's approximately 1800 hours, which would be 6 p.m. And the search is a website that was visited, wiki.answers.com.
Scrolling to the right. And what was the portion of Wiki Answers that was reviewed?
It says, how soon after a person dies does a life insurance policy pay out?
Nothing further.
So Terry Cross?
Perfectly clear, all of these items that were searched on Google were on Mr. Hearn's computer.
It's through johnhearn27@gmail.com,
So his website or his web page.
his email address.
Now, with regards to the Google search, does it also turn up data from Google Instant Messaging?
I don't believe on this case we requested instant messenger.
You were aware, were you not, that Jonathan Hearn claimed that there were communications between himself and Ms. Limon where Google Instant Messenger was utilized supposedly to plan the killing of her husband?
I'm not sure. I don't recall.
It appears that Mr. Hearn was doing quite a bit of research, correct?
Correct.
checking into whether, how you go about killing someone with arsenic. Is that right?
That's what the searches were for, correct?
You would also agree, I'm sure if you're aware, how long it takes to build up arsenic to the point where it is fatal.
I'm not sure.
You haven't looked into that as a part of your investigation.
Not specifically for this case, no.
This time I have no further questions for this witness asking the subject to recall.
Mr. Smith, anything?
Yes. The Google paperwork that you did receive, does it list what you requested?
Yes, it does.
Okay. If I could approach for purpose of refreshing recollection. For John Hearn 27, what content did you request?
Account info, the Google Drive, the email content, web browsing history, Google Voice, and Google Photos,
And what is the Google Drive?
where information can be stored from the Google account.
So the Google account information is stored in the drive.
It's like a essentially like a cloud storage drive.
Did you review if there were any emails within his account?
Yes, it did.
Now, did you also request other Google account information or other accounts?
Yes, it did.
And the other accounts that you searched, where did you get that information from?
Provided from Detective Meyer by Jonathan Hearn.
Nothing further.
Terry, based on those questions, anything, sir? Okay. You can step down, lawyer. You'll be subject to recall. Stay in contact with the prosecutor.
Thanks.
Mr. Smith, if these were not marked, next witness, counselor.
Dr. Robert Whitmore.
Could you step up to the podium, raise your right hand, and be sworn, please?
You do solemnly state that the testimony you shall give in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Come on up, have a seat. Good morning, sir. Can you tell us your name and spell your last name for the record, please?
Dr. Robert Whitmore, W-H-I-T-M-O-R-E.
You would as counselor.
Thank you. How are you currently employed?
I'm a forensic pathologist contracted with the Kern County coroner to do autopsies and external examinations on deceased persons to determine the cause and manner of death.
Can you please describe your training and experience that allows you to be a pathologist here in Kern County?
I went to undergraduate college for 12 years and earned 8 bachelor's degrees. Then I went to medical school in St. Louis University School of Medicine, obtained my MD degree in 1990. I did 2.5 to 3 years of a residency program in psychiatry before changing my specialty to anatomic pathology. I then moved to New York, where I did a residency program in anatomic pathology for 4 years. I finished the program and took my board examinations in anatomic pathology and passed. I'm board certified in anatomic pathology. Then I went to San Diego at the County Medical Examiner's Office and did a 1-year fellowship program in forensic pathology. Finished the program, took my board examination in forensic pathology, and I'm board certified in forensic pathology. I'm licensed to practice medicine in the states of California and Florida.
What is the purpose of an autopsy?
The purpose of an autopsy is to determine the cause and manner of death.
Now, in performing an autopsy, what is the general protocol or procedure that you do?
Well, the body's received in a homicide case in a sealed pouch. I'm present when the pouch is opened, the body's removed, photographs are taken. The body is undressed and more photographs are taken. Documentation of any medical therapy is done on diagrams. This is the external examination. I examine the body from head to toe, front to back, looking for injury or evidence of natural disease. I dictate the external examination with a handheld dictaphone. Then later during the internal examination, the organs are removed systematically and weighed and then examined and sectioned, looking for evidence of natural disease or injuries. Then at the end of the autopsy, the internal examination is dictated and added to the external exam, and that's eventually transcribed. The report, rough draft, is delivered to me, and I make any changes for typos or grammatical errors, and then eventually the final draft is reviewed again by myself and then signed.
Did you perform the autopsy in Kern County Coroner Report Number C01615-14?
Yes, I did.
Did that autopsy take place August 20th, 2014?
Yes.
And as you testified to, that you're present when the body bag is open, was it sealed?
Yes, it was.
Did you observe the proper blue anti-tamper tag number 27171 attached to that body bag?
Yes, I did.
Did you examine the body for any external evidence of injury?
Yes, sir.
And what did you find?
I found a couple of abrasions and 2 gunshot wounds.
And when you observe gunshot wounds, are you able to tell which one's first, which one's second in order?
Sometimes, but when that's done, it's usually in taking light of all the circumstances of the case, the history, and the nature of the wounds themselves.
Starting with the first gunshot wound, what were your findings?
In my report and on my diagram, the gunshot wounds are numbered, number 1 and number 2. That does not necessarily reflect the order in which the wounds were sustained. The first gunshot wound was to the left chin. That's first by my numbering system.
Now, were you able to classify the left chin as an entrance or an exit wound?
That's an entrance wound.
How are you able to tell it's an entrance wound versus an exit wound?
An entrance wound versus an exit wound has certain characteristics to it. One is marginal abrasion. You'll have the central defect. It's typically round, and then on the skin surrounding the central defect, there will be an abrasion ring. That's where the bullet pushes into the skin from the outside to the inside. You don't see that on exit wounds because the bullet's coming from the inside to the outside.
Were you able to see an exit wound that you connected with gunshot wound 1?
Yes, I did.
Where did you observe the exit wound?
The exit wound for gunshot 1 is on the back of the neck.
Based on the entrance and exit wound, were you able to get a direction or path of travel?
Yes, I was.
What were your findings?
The direction for gunshot wound number 1 is primarily from front to back, from the front of his body to the back of his body, and then exited the body. The bullet perforated the left mandible, fracturing it, went through his mouth, grazed the left side of the cervical spinal column in the neck, and then perforated the muscle in the back of the neck and exited the body. There was injury to the spinal cord.
Moving on to gunshot wound 2, were you able to locate an entrance?
Yes, I was.
Okay. And where did you discern the entrance wound was for gunshot number 2?
Gunshot number 2, again, the 2 does not necessarily indicate the order of firing. The 2 is just for my reference. But for number 2, the entrance wound is on the upper right front of the chest.
Can you describe the entrance wound as you observed it?
Could I describe it?
I mean, was it straight on to the chest, or was it at an angle?
This was a somewhat unusual gunshot wound. The bullet enters the front of the chest at an upward angle and from right to left. It goes under the skin for about 1.5 inches and then exits just over the right clavicle or collarbone. And then it re-enters the right neck. It perforates the right sternocleidomastoid muscle, which is the muscle on the front of your neck, which turns your head to the left or the right. There's one on either side. perforates that muscle, perforates the right internal jugular vein, the right common carotid artery, continuing upward, right to left, perforates the base of the skull on the right, continues upward, perforates the brain on the right side, and then strikes the inside of the calvarium, which is the top of your skull, impacts it on the inside, and kind of punches out a plug of bone, but does not perforate the skin. So it kind of hits the bone and kind of bounces back into the wound tract where it's recovered from the brain during the autopsy.
We're able to discern the direction and path, as you testified earlier, front to back, in that nature.
The direction, as I've testified for number 2, is upward and right to left. The path, it perforates the skin and soft tissue of the right upper chest, exits, then it re-enters the right neck, perforates the muscle, the internal jugular vein, carotid artery, base of the skull and brain, and impacts the inside of the skull, and then bounces back in. Both wounds had soot.
Describe what you mean by soot.
Soot is a gray-black residue that comes out the end of the gun barrel when a bullet's fired. It's in the smoke of the burning gunpowder, and if the muzzle or the end of the barrel is close enough to the target, in this case the skin, that soot will appear in the wound or on the skin around the wound, indicating a close range, in this case, very close range gunshot wounds in both cases.
Now, when you say very close range, based on your training and experience, are you able to assign an amount in feet, or is it approximate?
It'd be more on the order of inches, because there was no tattooing present. Now, tattooing is the hallmark of an intermediate range gunshot wound. That's where the muzzle is further away so that the soot is kind of filtered out by the air, and the unburned gunpowder travels behind the bullet and impacts the skin, leaving punctate marks on the skin. Some people call it stippling. Other people call it tattooing. So the fact that there was sooting in both cases but no tattooing indicates that the muzzle was very close to the skin, on the order of inches or less. In fact, I think in gunshot wound number 2, there's a rectangular abrasion just below the defect, which, in my opinion, is consistent with a muzzle imprint, and that's where the muzzle or the end of the barrel is actually touching the skin.
Based upon the autopsy, were you able to assign a cause and manner of death?
Yes, I was.
What is the cause of death?
The cause of death is multiple gunshot wounds, and the manner of death is homicide.
Your Honor, if I may approach, you have 2 items marked.
Please.
Pages 36 and 37
Yes, I do.
Okay, what is that a photograph of?
This is a close-up photograph of the bullet I recovered from the brain in this case. The case number is in the photograph, and that's the bullet I recovered.
Your Honor, I would also request Peoples 37 be moved into evidence at this time. It's a certified vital record showing the cause and manner of death from C01615-14, and it has been certified.
Are you asking 36 and 37 to be moved in?
Yes, Your Honor.
Any objection, Mr. Terry?
Submitted.
They'll be admitted.
Nothing further.
Terry Cross?
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Dr. Whitmore.
Morning.
Dr. Whitmore, with regards to, I know you indicated that there was no particular order, or that your numbering system wasn't to indicate order of gunshot wound. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. With regards to gunshot number 2, as using your numbering system, based upon the path of the bullet and ultimate location where it was recovered, was that a fatal gunshot wound?
Yes.
So, if someone was to be the victim of that gunshot wound and it was the first gunshot wound they received, would that have caused death almost instantaneously based upon the amount of damage it did?
Yes.
The first, you're using your numbering system, gunshot number 1. I want to understand a little better. You indicated it entered in the chin area? Is that
Yes.
right?
On the left chin.
Okay, so entered about here
Yeah.
and exited out the right side of the neck?
It's the left posterior neck,
Okay,
or back of the neck.
back of the neck. And that was on a fairly level plane? In other words, it wasn't an upwards angle or a downwards angle?
May I refer to my report?
If that would assist you in your refreshing your recollection, please do.
It's primarily front to back, but it did go downward by 2 inches.
Okay. It didn't go in an upward angle, it went in a downward angle.
By 2 inches.
Was that potentially caused by striking some of the bone area you talked about? I believe you said it struck parts of the spine and other anatomical structures, hard structures.
That's possible.
So it's a slight downward angle and not upward, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, you also mentioned that you found soot in the wounds. Is that right?
Yes.
In your experience, would someone using a suppressor, sound suppressor on a handgun, would that limit the amount of soot that could be discharged out of the firearm? If you know, in your experience.
Overruled. You can answer
I don't know.
Have you ever handled homicides where a sound suppressor was actually used? And I'm talking about the autopsy.
Not to my knowledge. If I have, it was never brought to my attention.
Now, with regards to the second wound, you indicated that there appeared to be a rectangular shaped imprint in the area of the wound. Is that right?
On which one?
On the second gunshot wound. Is that correct?
Yes, extending downward from the defect.
when you say extending downward from the defect, what are you exactly describing so the jury understands it?
Okay.
Me too.
So you have the defect on the skin, and then extending toward the feet, I guess. There's an abrasion there. It's rectangular. It's about 1 inch by 3/4 inches, and it's consistent with the muzzle.
And you're talking, if it's are you talking about a muzzle for, say, a semi-automatic versus an automatic firearm, or I mean a revolver?
Either one.
Would you also get that kind of rectangular impression from a round-shaped muzzle or sound suppressor on a firearm?
You could.
But based on what you observed during the course of your performing this autopsy, you believe that the shooter in both instances was within inches of the decedent. Is that right?
I don't know about the shooter, but the muzzle was.
So somebody's extending it, the muzzle was within inches of the decedent.
Yes.
With regards to shot number 2, based upon the path of the bullet and your observations, would it be likely that the decedent, Mr. Limon, was in a prone position when the shot was inflicted? Was he laying down or rather than being upright?
Could have been.
That makes sense? Would that be logical based upon what you observed?
He could have been prone or standing.
But in order to get that angle of path, it means that somebody'd have to be almost like this to do it?
It means that the end of the barrel is pointing upward towards his head.
But with that severe of an angle, it means that the shooter has to be standing right up to him and raising the gun like this, right? In order to be able to shoot in that angle, would he not?
I don't see why that would be that hard to do.
Okay. You've obviously never held a firearm with a silencer on it then, sir. Is that accurate?
Not too many times.
At all?
I think I have a couple times.
The sound suppressor?
They're legal.
We talked about it with the second shot. It's your opinion that once it was fired, assuming it just using your numbering system, shot number 2, that would have been instantly fatal, correct?
Rapidly fatal.
With regards to shot number 1, would that have, based upon the damage that you observed, been instantly fatal or rapidly?
I'm not entirely certain that that one could have been rapidly fatal.
As I recall, you saw it didn't fully strike or sever the spinal cord. It only, I think you said, nicked it. Would that be right?
Well, it grazed the spinal column, the bone, but then it bruised the spinal cord inside the bone. It's possible that
with medical attention that he could have survived that shot.
Yes.
Thank you. No further questions.
Smith.
Just have some questions about terminology. When you say rapidly fatal, what do you mean by that?
I use that in distinction from instantly fatal because it allows for a little bit more time.
But in doing an autopsy, you can't give a particular amount of time, a gunshot wound, or how long it would take for a gunshot wound to kill a person.
Sometimes you can. If there's no head, then instantly.
But in this case, you weren't able to assign a specific amount of time.
Rapidly fatal.
And then the second question of terminology, muzzle. What do you mean by the word muzzle?
The muzzle is the end of the barrel which the bullet exits the gun.
So if there was a suppressor, sound suppressor used, what would the muzzle include where the bullet exits the suppressor?
The muzzle would then be the end of the suppressor.
So the terminology muzzle is where the bullet essentially leaves the firearm, whether by itself or connected to a suppressor.
Yes.
Nothing further.
Mr. Chair. No further questions.
You sit down, Dr. Tench.
Thanks.
Mr. Smith.
We'll recall Kevin Thompson.
Sir, come on back up to the stand. Let me remind you, you're still under oath. Your witness, Mr. Smith.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson, were you present during a search 15170 Lime Street on January 3rd, 2017?
January 3rd?
I'm sorry, January 7th.
7th, yes.
Were you present at that search with a Detective Miller?
Yes.
Also Detective Meyer?
Yes.
Were you present when a storage area adjacent to a chicken coop was searched?
I was.
What were your duties during that search?
I was photographing.
Subsequent to the items being taken from the chicken coop, did you later photograph them here in Bakersfield?
I did.
And the purpose of taking those photographs?
To document the contents of the bags that were recovered from that chicken coop.
Your Honor, if I may approach, I had some items marked.
Yeah.
Equals 38, 39, and 40 marked as small.
If I may approach, Your Honor.
Please.
Mr. Thompson, showing you People's 39. Did you review that packet of photographs yesterday?
Yes, I did.
Did you recognize the photographs contained in the packet?
I did.
Were they all photographs taken by you?
Yes, they are.
Your Honor, would request People's 39 be placed in evidence at this time. Be allowed to publish.
Any objection, Mr. Chair?
Submitted.
To be admitted, counsel. Proceed.
please describe the photo.
Can I refer to my notes to reference what image this is?
Yes.
This is showing, that image is showing the contents of, that was in the Walmart, a reusable Walmart bag.
Page 2.
More of the contents from the Walmart bag,
Page 3.
the same contents from the Walmart bag.
These booklets, what were they of?
They were owner manuals, user manuals.
Page 4.
More of the contents from the Walmart bag.
Page 5.
More of the contents from the Walmart bag.
6.
That was a left shoe that was also from the Walmart bag.
7.
And that's showing the condition of the sole of that golf shoe.
Page 8.
This was a suppressor. It was told to me as a suppressor. That's how it's a flashlight that's converted into a suppressor.
Show you now what's been marked as People's 40.
Please.
Recognize People's 40.
Yes, I do.
What is People's 40?
This is the mag light suppressor shown in that photo.
Okay. Your Honor, I would request People's 40 be moved into evidence at this time.
Any objection? Be admitted.
Page 9.
I'm showing a view from the end of the maglite suppressor to show that it's clear completely through.
Page 10.
Here I'm showing the baffles that were placed inside the maglite to construct the suppressor.
When you say baffles, what do you mean?
I'm not a firearms expert, but placement of these baffles will suppress the gases as the firearm is fired.
And what are you using to take this photo? Or just kind of how did you set up the photo?
I used a mechanic's inspection tool. It's a camera that's on the end of like a 3-foot cable, and it has a light. There's a light and a camera that's on the end of this flexible cable that I inserted into the end of the maglite suppressor. And these images are shown on a monitor. I used a video cable to connect from the camera to a monitor so I could get a larger view of what I was seeing through the suppressor.
Page 11.
Same. It's just these are continual images with the camera being inserted a little farther into the suppressor.
So that includes 12.
All the same.
Okay. Moving on to 13.
This is actually this portion. of the suppressor, the threaded end cap of the mag light suppressor, and this portion right here would thread onto a barrel of a firearm.
Now, how many baffles were there in total within People's 40?
I don't recall. I think there were 6. I don't recall exactly.
Page 14.
This is more of the contents of the Walmart bag. There's some receipts and a little, like a hex tool.
Page 15.
More of the same. For this image, where it says relief phone, the phone information was on the opposite side.
Page 16.
This is a plastic bag. It was part of the contents of the Walmart bag, and there was a hole in this bag with some discoloration around the hole.
What color was the discoloration?
Black.
17. Page 17.
This is an additional photo of the more of a close-up image of the hole on the plastic bag.
Page 18 is just the same bag.
More of the same, yes.
Same bag.
Yeah, a scale was included in this image.
20.
There was one live round that was found in one of the golf shoes that was in the bag in here. I just photographed the head stamp on the live round from the golf shoe.
21 or page 21.
This photo is of a black and blue Leeds backpack that was recovered from the chicken coop.
Next page.
There's a receipt that was attached, or a label, a thrift store label that was attached to the backpack.
Page 23, People's 39.
This image is showing the contents of that backpack.
Page 24, People's 39.
This image is showing there's a hole towards the upper portion of the backpack, right at the separation between the black and the blue. It's from the exterior.
Page 25.
This is the same hole from the exterior of the backpack with the scale included.
26. Sorry.
This is showing the interior, the hole through from the interior of the backpack.
27, same hole in the same bag.
Yes, with the scale.
Page 28, People's 39.
This image is showing the contents of that backpack.
Page 29, People's 39.
This is an image of some copper fragments that were recovered from the interior of the backpack.
Page 30, People's 39.
This is a portion of a Toshiba laptop computer from the backpack.
The next photo is of that same Toshiba laptop.
It is.
Last page of People's 39.
This is the image of a right golf shoe from that backpack.
If I may approach the witness, please. Providing you People's 38. Do you recognize this CD?
I do.
What is the contents of that CD?
There's 2 short video clips from Selecta.
Select the video, I believe you testified earlier, was located on East Tehachapi Boulevard.
Yes.
Did you review the surveillance footage contained on People's 38?
I did.
Now there is a date and time stamp on People's 38. Do you recall reviewing that in preparation?
Not on this video, but on the original video. May I refer to my notes for that information?
Let me ask that question. You went to Selecta in the course of this investigation.
Yes.
Do you recall what date you went to Selecta to download the surveillance footage?
May I refer to my notes?
If that would refresh your recollection.
Yes. So on 8/21 of 2014, I responded to 1200 Tehachapi Boulevard to Selecta.
Now you downloaded surveillance footage from that business.
Yes, I did.
When you were downloading the surveillance footage, did you check the date and time?
The date and time on this device was correct.
What date did you download the information from? Was it from August 17, 2014?
Yes.
What was the time range that you downloaded from?
It varied per camera. If I can read through, I can give you the camera numbers as well as the time frames.
Go ahead.
So from the northwest front, which was D4, for 8/17/2014 between 1500 and 1834. Video from the front parking, which was D11, for 8/17/2014 between 1439 and 1925. Video from the west side, which was D12, for 8/17/2014 between 1441 and 1952. And then also from the receiving dock, which was D14 for 8/17/2014 between 1455 and 1902. So these time frames vary based on maybe motion sensing and activations of cameras, but my original search was for 8/17/2014 between 1500 and 1900.
What is currently marked as People's 38, that includes clips from the surveillance video you've just testified.
Yes.
Your Honor, I would request People's 38 be moved into evidence at this time.
The objection, Mr. Chair. Submitted.
No more questions.
Chair Cross.
Good morning, Mr. Thompson.
Good morning.
Mr. Thompson, when you were out doing the search at Mr. Hearn's residence on January 7th of 2017, did you locate any type of barrel to a firearm that had a threaded end on it?
I did not.
When you were searching through the backpack, the Walmart bag, or through anywhere else within that storage shed, did you locate any shell casings for a .45 caliber firearm?
No, I did not.
The only ammunition you found for a .45 caliber firearm was the one live round you found in the backpack. Is that right?
That's correct.
You indicated that you did recover some copper fragments from the interior of the backpack. Is that right?
Yes.
You know how long those have been in there?
No, I do not.
With regards to the sound suppressor, you indicated that in your recollection there were approximately 6 baffles in there. Is that correct?
I don't recall exactly, but I believe 6.
When we're talking about baffles, what are we actually talking about?
So these baffles are actually freeze plugs that are inserted into the tube of the mag light, and in this case they were secured with some sort of an epoxy or silicone that held them in place.
When you say freeze plugs for the jury and for uneducated persons such as myself, what are you referring to?
Well, again, I'm not a mechanic, but freeze plugs are used, they're an engine component.
And if I understand you correctly, this particular suppressor had to be, or was manufactured actually handmade. Is that right?
That's my understanding, yes.
Well, have you ever seen a sound suppressor that was used, that had used a mag light as a tube?
No, I have not.
And it appears that that would be what the intent of that particular item was. Is that right?
Yes.
So it requires someone to have knowledge on how to assemble it correctly, right?
Yes.
Which would possibly, if they hadn't done it before, to at least educate themselves on how to manufacture one of those items. Is that right?
Yes.
And were you, I can't remember, were you present when the residence out on Lime Street, Mr. Hearn's residence, was searched back in 2014?
On January 7th, I was.
On January 7th, how about in November 18th of 2014? Were you out at that location prior to the January 7th date, in 2014?
No.
Would it be safe to say you weren't aware whether or not these items were present in November of 2014 at the locations they were found at?
I have no idea.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Step down, Mr. Thompson. Thank you. Take our morning recess there, 15 minutes. Remember not to follow or express any opinion or discuss the case. We'll see you back in 15 minutes. All right, we'll go back on the record in People versus Limon. She's present in court. Mr. Terry and the people are represented. You have all 12 plus 4 in the box, Mr. Smith. Next witness.
People recall Jackie Moore.
If you come back up to the stand, let me remind you, you're still under oath. Your witness, counselor.
Good morning, Ms. Moore.
Hi.
I'm holding up People's 26, testified to by Detective Garcia as an iPhone that he provided to you. Do you recall receiving the iPhone January 3rd of this year, 2017?
Yes.
And what type of analysis did you do on that cellular phone?
I did an advanced logical extraction.
What is an advanced logical extraction?
It takes the data from the phone and it downloads it onto an extraction.
What type of information is downloaded using the software?
Each phone is different, and in this case, because it's an Apple phone, it provides different information than an Android. And I have my report if you want me to tell you what was extracted from it.
Okay. You could just provide in general what was extracted.
It extracts images, it extracts videos, it'll extract messages.
Are you able to extract such things as notes, call logs, contacts?
Yes.
What other items can be extracted?
On the device, your calendar, and if it'll give information if you have like what you search in Google, searches that you do on the computer. Some phones give you information of where the phone was at the time a photograph was taken.
Now, when you downloaded the phone, People's 26, did you do that with a passcode?
Yes.
Okay. So what's the process when you're downloading the phone?
After I receive the service request, I take the phone, I document the phone, I document if there's an SD card or a SIM card installed in the device. I will document if there's any damage, and then I document the number on the phone, which is the IMEI number, and it's unique to the device. I'll do the extraction. I plug the phone into the computer. I use Celebrite. Celebrite is a software program, and it's downloaded onto our computer. I connect it with a designated cord. It does the extraction to the designated folder on the computer, and then I'll generate a report. The report is generated to show what was extracted from the computer or from the cell phone.
Now, the report, or you place it onto a CD?
Okay, I didn't hear what you said.
Oh, I'm sorry. When you get the information, do you put it on a CD?
Yes, after generating the report, I'll make a face page. The face page has the information again, what I documented from the phone. I'll put the extraction report on The face page, it actually links it so that the detective doesn't have to search for the extraction. It actually links to it. And then I provide the detective with 3 copies of the extraction report. And depending on the size of the phone, how much information we get from the phone, I'll provide it either on a CD, DVD, or a Blu-ray, and it could be a thumb drive. And in this case, I think it was a Blu-ray.
And you provided that Blu-ray to Detective Garcia.
Yes.
And this download of the cellular phone, People's 26, that you did occurred this year, January 3rd, 2017.
Yes.
Nothing further.
Sherry.
No question. Thank you.
Thank you. You sit down this morning.
Thank you.
People call Detective Grantham.
So you step up to the podium, raise your right hand and be sworn.
You do solemnly state that the testimony you shall give in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Come on up, have a seat. And tell us your name and spell your last name for the record, please.
Darren Grantham, Grantham.
Your witness, counselor.
Thank you. How are you currently employed?
As a senior deputy sheriff for the Kern County Sheriff's Office,
What is your current assignment?
a robbery homicide unit.
Were you part of the robbery homicide unit in August of 2014?
Yes, sir, I was.
Were you involved in the investigation of the murder of Robert Limon?
Yes, sir.
Were you present subsequent to the arrest of Jonathan Hearn when his motorcycle was received here in Bakersfield at the crime lab?
Yes, sir.
Were you present when photographs were taken of the motorcycle?
Yes.
Your Honor, if I could approach, I had him marked.
Yes.
Equals 41 mark next in order.
Please.
Showing you People's 41. Recognize the photos.
Yes, sir, I do.
What are the photographs of?
These are taken of Jonathan Hearn's motorcycle.
Why was the motorcycle at the crime lab?
For forensic examination.
So the photographs in that exhibit were taken during the course of the forensic examination,
Yes, sir, they were.
and you were present.
I was.
Your Honor, I would request People's 41 be limited to evidence.
Any objection, counsel?
Submitted.
Submitted.
Were you also involved in November of 2014 of some wiretaps on some phones?
Yes, sir, I was.
Do you recall when the wiretap began?
Not the exact date. In November of 2014.
Who were the targets of the wiretap?
Sabrina Limon and Jonathan Hearn.
Do you recall how many phone numbers were involved in the wiretap?
I believe there was a total of 5.
when a wiretap is being performed, just describe how it's done.
Sure. So our duties, actually, as a detective is assigned to the wiretap, is we're in a room, and what will wind up happening is in the room there are computer screens. Those computer screens above them have a telephone number and the target subject's name associated with that same telephone number. And when you're in the wire room, what will happen is the phone will ring, and the computer will kind of light up and indicating to you that a telephone call is being generated between the two parties. And you can listen in on the phone conversation.
Now, the information in relation to what time, what phones are involved, is that all recorded?
It is, sir.
When you're listening to a call, do you write anything down, or what do you do?
You listen to it and you can take some notes, yes.
The notes that you take, are those contained, are those saved?
Not the notes, they are generated on a line item sheet associated with each of the phone calls to ascertain if the phone call is pertinent to the investigation or not pertinent to the investigation.
What do you mean by pertinent versus non-pertinent?
I guess I can give you an example that if Jonathan and Sabrina were having a conversation with respect to maybe her son Robbie having baseball practice or something, that would be non-pertinent to the investigation.
So if you're listening, you hear something that's non-pertinent, what do you do?
You minimize the call and stop listening to the conversation.
Are you done listening to the conversation, or you go back on the call at some point?
No, you can maximize the conversation after a certain time distinction, just to ascertain if they are speaking about something that you'd be interested in the investigation itself.
And all the information that you talked about, the phone, or the time of the call, the phones involved, maybe a written synopsis, is that all ultimately placed into a report?
Yes, sir, it is.
As to that report, did you review the calls that you were present for during the course of the wiretap in November 2014?
Yes, sir, and I have copies of them.
Your Honor, if I may approach, I had some CDs marked.
Yes.
Equals 42 through 52, Mark Nixon.
Your Honor, for purposes of his testimony, I would request to be allowed to place the CDs into the computer to show the header involved with certain audio for purposes of authentication.
Any objection to that, Mr. Terry?
No, Your Honor, I have no objection.
Thank you, counsel. Go ahead, Mr. Smith, that'll be allowed.
Detective Grantham, were you shown a CD with the writing People versus Sabrina Limon, BF 166801, wiretap date November 7, 2014?
I apologize, I didn't hear your question, sir.
Did you previously observe the CD?
Yes, sir, I did.
Wiretap date November 7, 2014.
Yes, sir.
Drawing your attention, this is CD for People's Exhibit 43. Listed at top, there's a number 760-987-3569, and then it says Lincoln 4, line 12. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What's the significance of that?
That's a telephone number associated with the call. Lincoln line number is, I believe, the designation for the line in the wiretap investigation, and then the date of the telephone call.
Were you present for a phone call made involving that number on November 7th, 2014 at 23:39 hours?
Yes, sir.
What phones were involved in that conversation?
Phones in the owned by Sabrina Limon and Jonathan Hearn.
Who called who?
Sabrina called Jonathan Hearn on that particular phone call.
Moving to the next line, November 7th, 2014, 23:47 hours. Were you present to listen to that in the wiretap room?
Yes, sir, I did.
Who was the phone call from, to whom, or who received the call?
From Jonathan Hearn to Sabrina Limon.
Did I also previously show you a CD with a wiretap date November 10th, 2014?
Yes, sir, you did.
Were you present during a phone call made at 11/10/2014 at 18:21 hours?
Yes, sir, it was.
Who made the phone call, or as in, who called whom?
Sabrina Limon called Jonathan Hearn.
Drawing your attention to the same date, November 10th, 2014 at 20:19 hours. Were you present in the wiretap room for that call?
Yes, sir, I was.
Who called whom?
Jonathan Hearn called Sabrina Limon.
Moving on to November 13th. Were you shown the CD with the wiretap date November 13th?
Yes, sir.
Drawing your attention to November 13, 2014 at 20:55 hours. Were you present in the wiretap room when that call was made?
Yes, sir.
Who made the call? Who received the call?
Sabrina Limon called Jonathan Hearn.
Moving on to November 18th. Were you shown that CD as well?
Yes, sir, I was.
drawing your attention to the audio from November 18th, 2014 at 0600 hours. Were you present in the wiretap room when that call was made?
Yes, sir.
Who made the call? Who received the call?
Jonathan Hearn called Sabrina Limon.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Cross.
Very quick, I promise. Detective Grantham, you've been involved in this investigation since August of 2014, is that right?
Yes.
In 2016, did you have a conversation with Mr. Hearn's attorney, Clayton Campbell?
Objection outside the scope.
It is.
Your Honor, he's testified he was involved in the investigation the entire time. I'm questioning with regard to his efforts in the investigation.
See counsel sidebar for 1 second. I did have the opportunity to speak to counsel at sidebar. Mr. Terry, your question is outside the scope. Do you wish to take Detective Grantham up as your own witness at this point? Yes, Your Honor, to avoid having to bring him back again, yes. Grant.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective Grantham, in 2016, did you have a conversation with Clayton Campbell, Mr. Hearn's attorney, here in the courthouse, where you indicated to him that if he were to offer testimony with regards to Ms. Limon, that he could get a deal?
Absolutely not. Not how you stated it.
Did you indicate to him in any way, shape, or form that if he were to, his client were to offer testimony against Ms. Limon, that he could have, there's a possibility he could get a deal?
No.
Thank you. Nothing further.
That would be a cross to you, Mr. Smith.
What did you say to Mr. Campbell?
Sure. I have to go back a little bit.
Let me start with this question. What's the date or time frame we're talking about?
Several years ago. I don't have a specific date, but several years ago.
Okay. And what did you tell Mr. Campbell?
At Jonathan Hearn's preliminary hearing, I had the opportunity to have lunch with Rob Limon's family members. They expressed to me that they would be willing to allow Jonathan Hearn to take a deal. They'd be willing for that to happen in exchange for his truthful testimony in this case. I merely conveyed that same information to Mr. Hearn's attorney, as I'm not a member of the district attorney's office and I cannot make any type of plea deals. That's all I did.
Nothing further.
Go ahead, Mr. Chair.
don't recall.
Mr. Smith?
That's all I have.
All right, you can step down. Randy.
Thank you.
Smith?
People call Detective Rutledge.
Step up to the podium, raise your right hand and be sworn.
You do solemnly state that the testimony you shall give in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Come on up, have a seat. Good morning, sir. Can you tell us your name and spell your last name for the record?
My name is Brandon Rutledge. Last is Rutledge.
Witness counsel.
Thank you. How are you currently employed?
I am a sergeant with the Kern County Sheriff's Office.
In November of 2014, what was your job duties?
I was a senior deputy assigned to the robbery homicide unit as a detective.
Were you involved in the arrest of Jonathan Hearn?
Yes.
Where did that arrest take place at?
I believe at the Redlands Fire Department.
Were you present or by yourself?
I was not present during that arrest. I was working with the unit at the time of his arrest.
Did you respond to that area for any items that were seized?
Yes, I did. Later on on the day of his arrest, I responded to the fire station and executed a search warrant.
Do you recall the officers that were involved in the arrest of Jonathan Hearn, as in putting the handcuffs on and putting him in a car?
No, sir, I do not.
Okay. You authored a search warrant for what area?
Sir, I executed the search warrant of his work locker inside the fire station and his personal truck, which was located in the employee parking lot of the fire station.
You didn't write the search warrant, you just executed it, as in you searched the area?
Yes.
Okay. During the course of that search, did you locate a firearm?
Yes, I did.
Please.
Equals 53, mark next in order.
Deputy Barron, have you seen that?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Showing you People's 53. Please open the box and verify what is the contents.
This is a Glock model firearm.
Did you seize that Glock model firearm?
Yes, sir, I did.
Where did you seize the Glock from?
From the center console of Jonathan Hearn's truck.
I can approach us.
Equals 54, mark next in order.
Yes.
Showing you People's 54. People's 54.
Yes, sir.
photographs?
Yes, sir, I do. The first photo is of a black Swiss gear backpack. And then the second photo is a black nylon case with several other items next to it.
Okay. Do you recognize the backpack as an item that you seized?
Yes, sir, from his work locker inside the fire station.
The other photograph, do you recognize what's laid out on the table?
Yes, sir, I do. It's a black nylon case. I located that inside the center console of Jonathan Hearn's truck, and the other contents were inside the black case.
What are some of the other contents?
Several different brands of .45 caliber ammunition and $2,400 worth of U.S. currency.
I would request Peoples 53 and 54 be moved into evidence.
Any objection, Mr. Terry?
Submitted.
To be admitted.
Now, in November 2014, were you involved in the wiretap involving the subjects of Jonathan Hearn and Sabrina Limon?
Yes, sir, I was.
Prior to your testimony today, were you shown a CD labeled Wiretap date November 10th, 2014?
Yes, sir.
Drawing your attention to November 10th, 2014, a call made at 17:54 hours. Were you present in the wire room when that call was made?
Yes, sir, I was.
Who made the call? Who received the call, if you know?
I believe Sabrina Limon called Detective Randall Meyer.
You're also shown a CD labeled Wiretap date November 11th, 2014.
Yes, sir, I was.
All right, starting drawing your attention first to November 11th, 2014 at 12:50 hours. Were you present in the wiretap room when that call was made?
Yes, sir, I was.
Who made the call? Who received the call?
It was Detective Randall Meyer returning Sabrina Limon's call.
Okay. Moving on to November 11th, 2014 at 14:51 hours. Were you present in the wiretap room when that call was made?
Yes, sir, I was.
Who made the call? Who received the call?
Based on my recollection, sir, I believe Sabrina Limon was calling a co-worker of the decedent, Corey Hamilton.
Okay. Moving on to November 11, 2014 at 15:52 hours. Were you present in the wiretap room when that call was made?
Yes, sir, I was.
Who made the call? Who received the call?
It was a call. I do not directly recall who made the call to whom, but it was a phone call between Jonathan Hearn and Sabrina Limon.
And all the information that you've testified to, was that inputted into a report
Yes.
for your later use?
Yes.
Did you yourself print out that report for provision in this investigation?
Sir, if you could clarify the wiretap phone calls, or
Just the wiretap phone call report.
I did not print that directly.
And when you were listening to these calls, did you write a synopsis?
Yes.
Did you verify that that synopsis was contained in that report?
Yes.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Just briefly, for the Rutledge, these are all phone calls that you had reviewed and listened to as of November 18th of 2014, is that right?
Can you rephrase that, please?
Sure. All of these calls that you testified to, that you just said that you had listened to and were made by either Ms. Limon or other persons, those were all calls that you had available to you and had listened to as of November 18th of 2014, are they not?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I have no further questions at this time.
Mr. Smith? Step down.
Thank you, Your
Well,
Honor.
and I apologize. I do forget one question I did want to ask, and I apologize, Your Honor.
As a cross question?
Yes, just briefly.
All right.
During the arrest and search of Mr. Hearn's items at the fire station, did you ever locate a alternate barrel for the Glock handgun that was threaded?
No, sir, I did not.
Handgun that was seized, did you observe whether or not it had a threaded barrel receiver on the end of the on the barrel of
No.
the gun? Okay, thank you. Nothing further. I apologize.
Mr. Smith, based on those questions,
Oh, Your Honor.
you step down for now. That's it.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Smith?
People call Detective Kimmel.
Would you step up to the podium, raise your right hand, and be sworn, please?
You do solemnly state that the testimony you shall give in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Come on up. Good morning, sir. Can you tell us your name and spell your last name for the record?
Kevin Kimmel, Kimmel.
You're with us, counsel.
Thank you. How are you currently employed?
I am a senior deputy with the Kern County Sheriff's Office.
What is your current assignment?
I'm a detective assigned to the robbery homicide unit.
What was your assignment back in August through November of 2014?
I was a detective assigned to the sexual assault and abuse investigation unit.
In November of 2014, were you involved in a wiretap with the subjects or suspects of Jonathan Hearn and Sabrina Limon?
Yes, I was.
You were present in the wiretap room on November 9th of 2014.
Yes.
All right, drawing your attention to November 9th, 2014 at 10:12 hours. You were in the wiretap room?
Yes.
As to that time, who made a call and who received a call, if you know?
I have a line list here, if I could refer to that.
If that would refresh your recollection.
Yes.
Go ahead.
At 10:12,
10:12, yes.
Sabrina Limon received a call from Jonathan Hearn. Oh, I'm sorry. Limon, all it says is that Limon is talking to Jonathan Hearn. It doesn't state who made the phone call.
So the parties involved are Jonathan Hearn and Sabrina Limon.
Yes.
Drawing your attention to November 9th, 2014 at 10:38 hours,
Yes.
10:37 hours. If you know, who were the parties involved in that call?
Again, it was Sabrina Limon and Jonathan Hearn.
Okay. And you were in the wiretap room when that call was made?
Yes.
Now, when you're in the wiretap room and a call is made, you listen to the call?
Yes.
You listen in its entirety?
Sometimes, yes, if it turns out to be a pertinent phone call.
Okay. Were you also present in the wiretap room November 10th, 2014?
Yes.
Drawing your attention to call made on November 10th, 2014 at approximately 7:28 hours. Were you present in the wiretap room when that call was made?
Yes, I was.
Okay. Who were the parties involved in that call?
Sabrina Limon and Jonathan Hearn.
If you're aware, do you know who made the call, who received the call?
It appears that Jonathan called Sabrina.
Drawing your attention again to November 10th, 2014 at 10:34 hours. Were you present in the wiretap room for that call?
Yes, I was.
Based on your notes, do you have the information as to who made the call, who received the call, or the parties involved?
The parties involved, again, were Sabrina Limon and Jonathan Hearn. And according to the notes, it doesn't say who called who.
Drawing your attention, November 11th, 2014 at 13:18 hours. Were you present in the wiretap room?
Yes, I was.
Who were the parties involved in that call?
Again, it was Sabrina Limon and Jonathan Hearn.
Within your notes, did you place any information as to who made the call, who received the call?
Sabrina called Jonathan.
Staying with November 11th, 2014, this time at 15:13 hours. Again, you were present in the wiretap room?
Yes, I was.
Were the parties involved, and if you know who made the call, who received the call?
Parties involved were Sabrina Limon and Jonathan Hearn, and Jonathan called Sabrina.
Drawing your attention, November 13th, 2014 at 13:30 hours. Were you present in the wiretap room?
Yes, I was.
And if you know, who were the parties involved, who made the call, who received the call?
Again, the parties involved were Sabrina Limon and Jonathan Hearn, and Jonathan called Sabrina.
Moving on, November 13th, 2014 at 16:08 hours. Same questions as to parties and direction of call.
Parties involved were Sabrina Limon and Jonathan Hearn, and Sabrina called Jonathan.
Drawing your attention, November 14th, 2014 at 10:48 hours. Were you present in the wiretap room?
Yes, I was.
If you know, who were the parties involved and the direction of the call?
Parties involved again were Jonathan Hearn and Sabrina Limon, and Jonathan called Sabrina.
Last CD marked People's 52, drawing your attention to, starting with November 18th, 2014 at 08:39 hours. You were present in the wiretap room.
Yes, I was.
If you know, parties involved and direction of call.
Sabrina Limon and Jonathan Hearn were the parties involved, and Sabrina called Jonathan.
Moving on, November 18th, 2014 at 09:37 hours. Parties involved and direction of call.
Again, the parties involved were Jonathan Hearn, Sabrina Limon, and Jonathan called Sabrina.
Moving on to November 18th, 2014 at 10:42 hours. Were you present in the wiretap room?
Yes, I was.
If you know, parties involved, direction of call.
The parties involved were Jonathan Hearn and Sabrina Limon, and Jonathan called Sabrina.
And Your Honor, just for the record, because I didn't state it, I showed People's 46 for November 10th to the detective, People's 47 for November 11th to the detective, People's 49 for November 13th, People's 45 for November 9th, People's 50 for November 14th.
Read, Mr. Terry.
Yes.
Record so reflect. Thank you.
Nothing further.
Cross.
Detective Kimmel, these are all phone calls that you had prior to the arrest of Ms. Sabrina Limon in November 18th, 2014. Is that right?
Yes.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Anything, Mr. Smith, based on that?
No, Your Honor.
Just step down, Kimmel. Thank you. Smith.
We'll recall Detective Meyer.
Still under oath, Detective. You with us, Mr. Smith?
Thank you. Detective Meyer, you were the lead investigator in this case.
Yes, sir.
Were you involved in the wiretap involving the subjects of Jonathan Hearn and Sabrina Limon?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The previous detectives that testified were in the wiretap room when calls were made between the parties. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, did you yourself sit in the wiretap room, listen to calls?
Yes, I spent quite a bit of time in the wire room and out of the wire room making phone calls to Sabrina Limon. Sometimes I would go out to make a phone call to her to what we call stimulate the wire or tickle the wire, and then I would go back into the wire room and I would listen to the call that was being taken place by the two parties, Sabrina Limon or Jonathan Hearn.
When you say stimulate the wire, what do you mean by that?
Sometimes we would place a call. I would place a call to Sabrina Limon to discuss a topic of interest or something that we have located during the investigation that would stimulate the conversation between Sabrina Limon and Jonathan Hearn.
Do you recall what topics you used to stimulate the calls?
Throughout the investigation, we used several different topics. At one point, one of the stimulations, which was one of the first ones, was that we were basically at a dead end at the investigation, and I wanted to replay the original video with the subject walking across the camera. And after that phone call, it stimulated some conversations. We also used possible DNA to stimulate some of the conversations between Sabrina Limon and Jonathan Hearn.
What other items did you use to stimulate the conversation?
I also did brought her in for an interview to speak with her. We set it up as a kind of a closing interview. We were pretty much at a dead end in the investigation, and so I wanted to bring her in for a final interview, brought her in to speak with her, and then after that interview, it also stimulated some of the conversations between Sabrina Limon and Jonathan Hearn.
Any other that you recall?
I know there were several, not off the top of my head.
Towards the end, just prior to the arrest, did you also attempt to stimulate the wire by providing a description of a possible suspect?
Yes, I did.
What did you do in efforts to stimulate the wire?
Towards the late ends of the wire, just before the arrest, I contacted Sabrina Limon and told her we had received information regarding a possible subject who was riding a motorcycle to and from the area during the time of the murder. And we had received information from a source that told us the subject's name was possibly John. And at that point, was hoping that it would stimulate some conversation between Sabrina Limon and Jonathan Hearn, which it did.
So you're stimulating the wire, and then you go into the wire room, listen to the calls, just to kind of see what's going on between the two of them.
Yes, obviously I didn't want to be inside the wire room while making the phone call, so I would step out in the same building that we were conducting the wire in and make the phone call, and then I would walk back into the wire room.
Now, when you made a phone call, which phone did you use?
I used my department-issued cellular telephone.
Now, those phone calls there are still picked up by the wiretap, correct?
Yes, they are.
Were you present in the wiretap room to listen to calls on November 9th, 2014?
I was not at that point in time.
Did you make a call at November 9th at 10:15 hours?
I did, and that was the point where we started the initial call to let her know we were at a dead end in the investigation. I was not in the wire room for that phone call.
So that call, November 9th, 2014 at 10:15 hours, that is a call from your work cell phone to Miss Limon.
I believe the one at 10:15 was a call. Miss Limon was calling me back. I had called her prior, I believe an hour before that, and she was returning my phone call.
That was People's 45. Moving on to November 10th. Again, were these calls, if you recall, calls made by you, or were you in the wiretap room?
On the 10th,
Yes.
I believe that I was not in the wire room at that time when that call was also made. And that was a phone call from Sabrina Limon to my cell phone.
So the parties for that call are Sabrina Limon and yourself, and she's calling you back?
Yes, that's correct.
Drawing your attention to the first item, November 10th, 2014 at 10:02 hours. Prior to your testimony today, have you had the chance to review that call?
Yes, I have.
Moving on to November 11th, 2014. Again, prior to your testimony, did you review the audio contained in portions of the CD, Smart People's 47?
Yes, I have.
Drawing your attention to November 11th, 2014 at 07:17 hours. Were you in the wiretap room, or is that a call you made?
If I can double check my notes, I believe that was a call. I believe I was in the wire room at that time.
Okay. And again, these notes were written and included in the wiretap report. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, if I was present for a phone call and I was listening to the phone call at that time, I would write a synopsis of what the call contained.
If you need to, if you could refresh your recollection with the court's permission.
Go ahead.
Confirming November 11th, 2014 at 7:17.
Yes.
I was in the wire room at that time.
If you know who were the parties involved in that call and who made the call, who received the call.
Yes, the parties are Jonathan Hearn and Sabrina Limon, and Jonathan Hearn made the telephone call.
Drawing your attention to that same date, November 11th, 2014 at 08:50 hours. Were you present? Do you know the parties involved in that call?
Yes, I do.
Who were the parties involved?
The parties involved were Sabrina Limon and Jonathan Hearn, and Sabrina Limon contacted Jonathan Hearn.
Placed into the player, People's Exhibit 49. Were you present November 13th, 2014 at 07:33 hours?
Yes, I was present in the wire room.
If you know, who were the parties involved, who made the call, who received the call?
The parties involved are Sabrina Limon and Jonathan Hearn. Sabrina Limon calling Jonathan Hearn.
All right, we'll take our lunch recess there. See everybody back at 1:30. Remember not to form or express any opinion or discuss the case.